Really needed that.
Mr. Todd, that's the life I covet by the sea, Mr. Todd. Oh, I know you'd love it.
So, what happened at the end? The last few episodes seem like they ran out of money or time or something. I'm not saying it's bad, because it definitely still satisfies, but there's just a few things that happen because of reasons that are clearly more plot device than actual character motivation. Let's start with Miss Wardwell the Witch Hunter. Satan goes to actual Miss Wardwell's house, where Lilith is hiding as her fiance Adam. We have this weird scene where Miss Wardwell hugs Lilith and the camera reveals her Wardwell face, so Lilith, the demoness, disguised as Miss Wardwell, disguised as Adam, is hugging her former flesh puppet, actual Miss Wardwell. It's a weird scene. Anyway, in an attempt to gain her trust, which is necessary because assumedly the good in her heart protects her from Satan's power, Faustus Satan rolls up disguised as a priest who is going house to house telling the residents of Greendale that Satan is in town. Which seems like a pretty strange reason to me, and Miss Wardwell definitely shouldn't just let a strange priest, claiming to know where Satan is, into her home. The Wardwell that was briefly characterized earlier in this series doesn't seem that gullible, but I guess you can explain it away with the fact that her dreams of hell are having her a little bit frazzled. That's fine. But then this raving priest, who she just met, tells her that Sabrina, her favorite student, and her entire family are witches. Now, to her credit, she doesn't take this at face value. She at least goes to spy on the Spellmans, only to find Zelda burying something in the cane pit, which is clear evidence that Zelda Spellman is a witch, despite the fact they live in a graveyard and run a mortuary. Miss Wardwell, in her infinite wisdom, decides to confront Zelda by knocking on the front door and shooting her point blank before running away. Now, it's not clear if she already had the gun or if she bought it on the way to the mortuary, but either way, it seems a little brutal for timid Miss Wardwell. But maybe the dreams of hell influenced her? Impossible to know. Second weird plot device, Lilith's baby. When Faust and Satan go to find Lilith, it's so she can separate the two with a ritual, restoring Satan to his former power. Now they both know that when she does this, he'll be free and torture both of them, so they concoct a plan. Lilith puts Satan to sleep inside Faustus, and then they make a baby together. Lilith gives Faustus the mark of Cain, which means he can't be hurt by anyone, and when Satan wakes up, he's gone and Lilith is waiting. He gives her the whole, you know what was going to happen, so you didn't even try to run, what a good girl, etc., etc. He pins her against a wall, and she explains that, oh boy, I'm pregnant with your baby now, so you wouldn't hurt me, and it's a boy, so you super wouldn't hurt me. A mother knows these things. Now, I've never been pregnant, and I probably never will, but I'm fairly confident that a mother doesn't know what the baby's gender is, but maybe it's a demon thing, you never know. Now, Satan never, that I can remember, expressed wanting a male heir. Like, sure, Sabrina was a pain in his ass, but I guess it helps with the whole patriarchy is a problem theme, which I'm fine with. It suits the show and the theming, and is an actual topic that needs to be talked about. Problem number 3, the time travel bulbitude. Problem number 3, time travel bulbitude. Now this one I think has the most basis for being part of the original plot line. Early on it is established that the Eldritch Time Egg that Blackwood collected from Loch Ness can alter time and the water around it gains similar properties. Maybe that's a sly attempt at explaining how Nessie, a dinosaur, still exists. Maybe that's a sly attempt at explaining how Nessie, a dinosaur, still exists in the loch. At any rate, Sabrina even used this water to go back to Golgotha and retrieve Pontius Pilate's bowl. The place where it seems a little phoned in is at the very end. Basically, because of Sabrina's actions, the world is taken over by the pagans, hell is thrown into disarray, and the Celestials come down to slaughter the entire population of hell. This is all explained by a voiceover by Ambrose. Sabrina is stuck inside the ninth circle in a stone, which is conveniently the only region of hell that's in a time pocket for reasons. That's strange because Sabrina claims it feels like only a few years passed while she's trapped in the stone, while in reality decades have passed. It has always been the prerogative of hell to increase your suffering in an I have no mouth and I must scream sort of way, so speeding up your sentence, which, in fairness, is still eternity, doesn't quite seem in line with those ideals. Ignoring the inefficiency of hell, a second time-traveling Sabrina comes and saves the first one, claiming that once the first Sabrina has finished her quest, she has to come back and switch places back. The now free Sabrina goes and finds Ambrose, who survived with a warding spell, and they fabricate a plan to go back in time and change things, using the time egg and the unholy regalia, which they somehow forge into a morning star. Sabrina goes back in time to the point where Blackwood and a group of pagans invade the academy. It's not clear whether this was a chosen point or if she just ended up there by chance. In a separate scene, Prudence breaks up with Ambrose with the explanation of, "If you had just let me kill my father in Scotland, none of this would have happened. My sister would still be alive." Which is entirely correct. Blackwood wouldn't have been able to serve as an Akron for Satan, though, so I guess a different set of problems would have arisen from that. Maybe they could have stuffed the body in Hilda? I don't know. Ignoring that possibility, Sabrina goes through and saves all her friends, while the Sabrina already in that timeline is completing the last search for the unholy regalia, which is a great way to show the inner divide Sabrina has been feeling the whole season. But still, I have a kind of vendetta against time travel as a plot device. I'll let it slide this time. Sabrina fixes everything and saves the world, yay, but instead of going into the stone like she's supposed to, she leaves Caliban inside. Oh yeah, in the original timeline, he hides in the stone and tricks Sabrina into giving him Judas's 30 silver coins. They decide to exist in the same timeline, one in Greendale and one ruling as the Queen of Hell, so they can both live the lives they've been torn between. There's no real repercussions of this, though Ambrose is not happy about this at all, saying the ramifications, blah, blah, blah. A clock falls off the wall. I wonder if that's foreshadowing.
That's the life I covet by the sea, Mr. Todd. Oh, I know you'd love it.
We have a confirmed season 4 for Sabrina, which is always a relief for a bingeable show like this. There was a bit of a power creep in season 3, and the show is taking a direction that explores different forms of witchcraft and magic, with the pagans worshipping Pan and the Green Man, Mambo Marie a voodoo priestess, the Church of Night renouncing Satan and Lilith and choosing to worship Hecate instead, and Blackwood's worshipping of the Eldritch Terrors. But I mean, come on. In a show where you can defeat literal Satan, there has to be a power creep. The Green Man can overpower Satan at full strength, and the Eldritch gods can overpower the other gods and Earth, presumably. Both Lilith and Mambo Marie pretty clearly allude to a coming war on the horizon, even darker than what they've just been through. And the scene where Blackwood breaks the time egg and there's a horrible shaking, light, and noise makes it pretty clear that this big season 4 conflict will be cosmic horror. I'm excited for that, but also a little bit worried, if I'm being honest. Cosmic horror is one of the hardest, if not the hardest genre to get right. The balance between description and imagination is really hard to tread, and a visual medium is usually not the best way to go about doing that. The crux of the genre is that the beings and gods that antagonize you are completely beyond your understanding, almost imperceivable in their strangeness, and on a scale so grand you can't defeat it. You can only hope that it doesn't notice you. Now sure, the main cast are god slayers, imprisoning Satan, usurping him, killing Pan, and stopping the rebirth of the Green Man, but this is meant to be on a completely different scale. My expectation, or maybe it's a hope, is that the realms and the gods will need to work together. We did get a brief glimpse of angels in Season 2 and an even briefer interaction in Season 3, but the mentions of celestial power and celestial blood allude to more of a presence in the coming season. Even Hecate, the triple goddess, is represented as the phases of the moon, which Ambrose explains is, in fact, a celestial body. So perhaps Hecate herself is a celestial, more angelic than infernal. It doesn't seem to matter where witches and warlocks get their powers from, any strong being will do. I'm thinking, again, maybe it's more of a hope than actual expectations, but we might see a heaven, hell, earth alliance. Sabrina did mention wanting to work with heaven instead of against them, and now that she's Queen of Hell, she can pretty much do whatever she wants, as long as she gets through the bureaucracy. Though now she probably understands the balance of the realms better, so she may steer clear of that sort of an alliance. Almost certainly, we're getting time travel repercussions. A clock falling off a wall isn't exactly subtle, and Ambrose and Sabrina even discuss who's likely to find out about the two of her existing in the same timeline. Now the Church of Night is the Order of Hecate, there's little reason for Greendale Sabrina to go back to hell. But that's never how things work out, is it? We'll probably get some sort of lesson about how you can't really have the best of both worlds. If you spread yourself too thin, you'll end up exhausting yourself. And it'll be disappointing, but one of the Sabrinas will probably have to go and perhaps abdicate the throne back to Satan, or maybe his new son, who knows. At some point, Lilith will have to give birth to her and Satan's child, and there will likely be another struggle for the throne with another challenge. Though it could be argued that while Sabrina and Unnamed Baby Boy both have a claim to the throne, Unnamed Baby Boy's regent could either be Lilith or Satan. They're both his parents, and it's unlikely they'll give up their rivalry anytime soon. Prudence x Nikki. Gross. Disgusting. I hate this, and I hate Nick. In the final episode, there's a scene where the two connect over being lonely. Prudence having lost both of her sisters, one killed and one insane, and Nick having lost Sabrina. Not that he ever really deserved her. It was actually Prudence who helped Sabrina to realize he was horrible to her, even gave her a spell to get over him. But since stories always need convoluted love hexagons, here we are. Nick missing Sabrina, Ambrose missing Prudence, Sabrina missing Harvey, Harvey in love with Roz. And everyone's acting out a Midsummer's Night's Dream. At least Theo and Robin got their happy ending. I'll be devastated if they do something to those sweet children. They deserve nothing but goodness. Blackwood turns into a raving madman. He's already started his descent into madness, from high and mighty, conniving, and a well-put-together priest, and as the show progresses, he's become more and more obsessed with killing the Spellmans. That kind of singular thinking is never good, and association with the Eldritch gods is a sure way to melt your brain. His companions are two brainwashed children and a manic killer, so he's already got his posse in line. He is shown with considerable power when Sabrina meets him in the academy before she goes back in time, though his neck-snapping antics do occur in a dream, so it's hard to know if it's a true measure of his strength. I'm really hoping we get a proper madman, though. Someone who eventually breaks and babbles and has little control over his life and functions. Agatha is mad, but in a manic, carnal, violent sort of way. I want to see Blackwood dissolve to nothing but a puddle of mumbling, screaming, and complete insanity. I don't know if we'll get this. He's been too established as an ongoing villain. He'll probably just advance his fixation on revenge further and further, which is okay. It's like, whatever. I'll survive.
That's the life I covet by the sea, Mr. Todd. Oh, I know you'd love it.
If there's one thing English taught us, it's that every piece of media has an intended theme, and you should look for it to completely enjoy the experience. This, of course, isn't true, as most art is subjective, and a lot of things are made simply for the enjoyment of making them, and not to teach some philosophical lesson. That being said, the themes I got out of this season were pretty obvious to me. Of course, we continue the subject of women being powerful in their own right, and shaking off their male oppressors, but that could be its entirely own video, and there's other people better equipped to tackle that subject, namely, any woman. The first thing I noticed was Nick and Sabrina's relationship. The first act Sabrina takes in this season is to go to hell and attempt to save Nick, who she finds chained at Lilith's feet, the Dark Lord still inside him. She, of course, gets him back, and then a bunch of stuff happens, and boom! Satan's in Blackwood now, and Nick is mostly free of Satan. As the season continues, Sabrina time after time tries to help Nick, who continues to lash out and delve deeper into alcoholism, drug use, and cheating on her with sex demons provided by Dorian. Each time Sabrina attempts to help him, he tells her he doesn't want it, eventually culminating in a confrontation in the woods where he blames her for leaving him in hell, letting him be tortured for what seems like decades, and just generally ruining his life. Now, certainly if someone doesn't want you to help them, you shouldn't be forcing yourself on them, but a part of Satan was still inside him at this point, so it's unclear how much rage was him and how much was Satan. Eventually, Sabrina and Ambrose remove Satan's residue from inside him and cleanse him of all the drugs in his system, and when he comes to, he has a conversation with Sabrina in which he explains he doesn't think it was Satan who made him angry, and those were his true feelings, which is fine. Even though Sabrina did literally go to hell to bring him back and purge the remnants of Satan from him, Sabrina is of course heartbroken because despite her immense power and influence, she is still a teenage girl with humans and emotions. Prudence notices the tension between the two and has a conversation with Sabrina, detailing a spell that would sever any feeling Sabrina had for Nick, and basically helping her realize that Nick wasn't worth her time. She had done everything for him, and despite what he was feeling, he had never given her so much as a thank you. Later, we get the emotional build-up scene, which doesn't disappoint. Sabrina tells off Nick for being a douche canoe, that she's better than he is, and he won't hold sway over her anymore. Later, she performs the spell, removing her feelings for him, and when he asks if they're still friends, she walks past him, and that's that. Nick has his own problems, which aren't so explicitly stated as his relationship with Sabrina, but nonetheless still serve a point. Earlier, when we see his internal struggle with Satan, it's a sort of homoerotic, sweaty, eternal wrestling match. Nick has been shown more than once to be bisexual, and while I don't think this is meant as an actual attraction to Lucifer, it serves its point. After the two are separated, Nick returns to Satan, who states, "I knew you would come back. You couldn't stay away, could you? A part of me is still inside you." This is not only foreshadowing for the residue that needs to be extracted, but alludes to the allure that Satan has. One of the lessons most Christians are taught is that Satan is attractive, in all ways. He doesn't show up as a scary demon. He'll show up as an attractive person with attractive qualities who you'll be attracted to, and will be more likely to serve and do favors for. There's a reason Luke Cook plays Lucifer, not Danny DeVito, though I would love to see that adaptation. I would pay good money for a Danny DeVito devil. That aside, Nick is drawn back to that which is bad for him, even literally offered drugs in exchange for letting Satan free, which of course he accepts. The most obvious toxic relationship this season is Lilith and Satan himself. While she has conquered her feelings for him in the previous season, and had practically severed her connection to him, when he breaks free, he is still seeking to torment her. Her only way of protecting herself was to literally impregnate herself with his child, which is a little heavy to discuss, so we'll just leave it at that. Her struggle with Satan continues in a more political manner. Despite the fact he no longer controls her romantically, he still uses whatever means necessary to keep her under his thumb, and continue to make her feel helpless. Of course, I don't think he'll end up victorious in that way at the end, but the story is in the struggle, not in the conclusion. The second main theme that stood out to me was finding your own true self, and the different faces you present to different people, despite what you feel you should be deep down inside. Throughout the season, Sabrina is constantly faced with helping her family and her coven, or pursuing the throne of hell through the quest of the unholy regalia. I have a problem with this, though. By all means, the best way to help her coven would have been to become the actual, literal queen of hell. Like, sure, it's hard to fight off pagans when your coven has no magic, but fairly easy if you have all the hordes of hell at your disposal. Ignoring that, the point of the separation is pretty clear. You can do everything poorly, or one thing well, and it's better to be yourself than to try and please everyone. Lilith and Zelda are constantly pulling her back and forth, insisting that their cause is the more important one. At one point, Zelda even cedes this, but then later the coven is back to, "Oh, how can you be doing that when we need help?" Nick says this too, but he's a worthless trash monster, so I don't really care. Throughout the season, we're shown a perhaps excessive use of glamours. Right from the beginning, Prudence and Ambrose disguise themselves as unnamed characters to kill Father Blackwood, who turned out to be a glamoured son of Judas. After this first encounter, the other sons are never mentioned or encountered, though. Maybe they're all dead? It probably doesn't matter. Caliban glamours himself as Judas to doom Sabrina for eternity, and Pesta glamours herself as Miss Wardwell, who is apparently a virgin, so that she can poison the Green Man. Oh yeah, Pesta is one of the hedge witches the coven summoned to aid them. She poisons things. All these glamours are sources of trickery and deceit, and while they seem mostly successful, it illustrates the point that we don't always reveal who we are to those around us. The season ends with Sabrina literally splitting her personalities through time travel antics, leaving one to rule as Queen of Hell and one to live as a teenager in Greendale. Though through flash forwards and dream sequences, we see that Sabrina doesn't seem to age, probably because of her celestial blood, so maybe she'll just be a teenager forever. Is this splitting healthy? Probably not, but I'm still interested to see where it goes.
That's the life I covet by the sea, Mr. Todd. Oh, I know you'd love it.
We get more songs. I love this. I know there's people out there who exist in the world, Grinches mostly, who don't think musical numbers belong in non-musical works. And the beautiful thing about that? It's okay to be wrong. The scrappy teens of Greendale start a band and bless us with covers of My Sharona and Teenage Dirtbag, which I can't get over. We might have all forgotten that Ross Lynch was a Disney Channel singer, but that just feels like a happy little surprise we get when he starts singing. I would totally pay to see these guys perform. They've got sound, they've got style, they've got performance. It helps that I really like Teenage Dirtbag too. They do take out the line, "he brings a gun to school," which ruins the cadence a bit, but it feels pretty good to know that while the show is about demons, blood sacrifices, eternal damnation, and other dark deeds, they don't want to bring up that sort of very real conversation. The cheerleading team, the Ravenettes, get to sing "Hey Mickey" twice, once in an amazing scene where they perform in a dark arts academy for a coven that wants to drain their powers. I always love seeing a scene that has never been done before, something you really can't expect when you go into a show or a movie or whatever you're experiencing. There's a sort of forced hymnal to celebrate the Hare Moon. Hilda sings By the Sea for a Sweeney Todd audition, which is adorable in every way. I can't get over it. And a lullaby that puts the whole town to sleep. There's not a whole lot to say about this. I think it's hard to do justice to audio mediums without just playing the whole thing. But there's a link in the description if you want to check that out.
Mr. Todd, that's the life I covet by the sea, Mr. Todd. Oh, I know you'd love it.
I've always loved Zelda. Not the game, just the character. She's had her fair share of trials and triumphs, but we truly get to see the breadth and depth of her character in this season. She has now appointed herself as directrix of the remnants of the Church of Night, a leadership position we've all wanted to see her take control of. She wrestles with the fall of her literal idol and god, and who to turn to now, praying to Lilith and then finding her new god to be just as useless. She is charged with a task unlike any the Coven has had to face, beating back the pagans while they have virtually no power. Now, Ambrose takes the helm in finding these solutions because he's the research character and that's what he does. But Zelda does a good job of keeping the team motivated and on track. At one point, she actually thanks her family for the contributions. She's always been about family and devotion and loyalty, though usually that takes the form of degrading those who she doesn't see as loyal. We finally get an opportunity to see her own loyalty to the family and to the Coven. After Zelda is shot by Miss Wardwell, she's taken down to Mambo Marie, who can't heal her for reasons. So she removes the bullet, and then they kind of just hope for the best, though with the Coven's waning powers, survival seems unlikely. A banshee even arrives, signaling the death of a Spellman. As she lies there, dying, her spirit travels to the Netherrealm, where Hilda meets her. Hilda's dead because Zelda shot her because she turned into an awful spider person, but that's too much to go into right now. Long story short, the Spellman siblings meet up in the Netherrealm with Edward for the first time since his death, and they're determined to return to the land of the living. Edward gives Zelda a Ghost of Zelda's past, present, and future experience, where she puts together the new moon, half moon, and full moon phases, representing her as Maiden, Mother, and Crone, to be an indicator of Hecate, the triple goddess of magic. It is unclear why Child Edward was reading about Hecate, but maybe we'll get more information later. Probably not. Zelda sees herself as a crone on her deathbed and puts two and two together, waking up in the basement with an answer to save the Coven. Then Blackwood stabs and kills her. In the second timeline, where Sabrina saves Zelda before she can be stabbed to death, Zelda renounces Satan and joins hands with the other witches to invoke Hecate. Hilda never returns from the grave, so Zelda beseeches the triple goddess in what I believe is the best acting of the season, calling on her to bring back her sister and offering the Coven's worship and loyalty if Hecate can restore the powers to the Coven. This is successful, and they get to work plotting the demise of the pagans. The Coven confronts the pagans, and we see Zelda in this glorious red jacket, the kind of looks like a military uniform. It gives us this feeling of power and grandeur. Zelda is no longer the directress of a dying Coven, but the general of a magical army hell-bent on restoring order to the world. Also, she makes out with Mambo Marie, which is the lesbian kiss we all really needed to see. If you like this, subscribe so I know to make more. Also, I wrote a book. That's in the description too.
Todd, that's the life I covet by the sea, Mr. Todd. Oh, I know you'd love it.
You didn't exist. Unhold. See that after. Get to see the breadths and depths. Beating back the pagan. Hilda is dead because Zelda and Edward for the first time. Hilda